Good evening, everyone. We are here tonight at our Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting, and we have Commissioner Sanchez here with us tonight. Tonight, we're going to be discussing 3 items, and we're just going to go ahead and just get started with the agenda. So, we're going to go to action item. Actually, Chief Kamala Nathan, I had a small amendment that I wanted to do for this resolution with the Saman Community Development Center. Who's our attorney for tonight? Is it?
Meet our new general counsel for the facilities division team, Suzanne Kim. She is not new to the district, but she's new to us. So lots of new people.
Nice to meet you guys. I'm Suzanne Scruffy Kim, and I'm here to support. And yes, I'm aware of the request.
Okay. Well, welcome to the party.
I'm happy to be here.
So process-wise, am I to do the formal amendment request now, or do I do it during the commissioner discussion?
That is a good question.
Commissioner Sanchez, you might know actually.
I don't think it really matters.
I don't think it matters. If you want to be on the safe side, you should probably take public comment prior to, well, I don't.
Yeah, I'd take public comment, but I don't think it matters.
The agenda. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to share the resolution?
Well, I have it. It's how about this, you guys? So I'll say it, and then we could talk about the item, and then we could open it up for discussion. But let's just tonight we're going to open it up with section B, action item. Item number 1 is resolution 22-125A1 in support of partnership with Saman Community Development Center. I'm going to make an amendment tonight. I'm requesting an amendment tonight to alter the section where it says Pacific Islander Resource Center to Samoan Education Center. So it's going to change from Pacific Islander Resource Center to Samoan Education Center. Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and open it up. Chief Kamala Nathan, do you have any? Do you have a presentation for this item? You're on mute.
Commissioner, as it's a resolution that's been introduced by you, I have not produced a presentation. The text of the resolution is attached, and the only thing I would add as a note is that a joint use agreement is the appropriate, I think, relationship and mechanism for Samoan Community Development Center to establish a more formal relationship with SFUSD. They have been operating on and off on a permitted basis for a while, and I think that this is a better structure that will ensure both entities get the support and resources that they need to do their work at the John McLaren site.
Sounds good. All right, thank you. Appreciate that. And I know staff has been working, with the organization. And so, okay. So Judson, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment.
It'll be me, Commissioner.
Deborah, sorry about that, Judson. Deborah.
If you'd like to speak to this item, can you please raise your hand? Seeing one, Commissioner.
Okay, we'll go ahead and give that one person a 1 minute to speak.
Okay, John.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear
Hello,
you.
so my name is John Aisha Enna, and I'm currently the Director of Programs for the Samoan Community Development Center. We are currently located in the John McLaren building here in the Visitation Valley and have been since 1996. We started off with one youth program in 1996, and now we're providing an array of programs stemming from programs for our seniors right down to our 0 to 5 population. And we just really appreciate the partnership that we have. And we think this partnership is very important because SCDC does support a lot of the schools located in the Southeast sector, or otherwise known as District 10. And many of those schools receive a lot of support from us in the form of soft handoff to families at home who are unreachable, free Samoan translation and free Samoan interpretations, especially when youth are undergoing IEPs, because we know a lot of our families get lost in the shuffle and translation. And so we think this partnership has been a blessing and is also needed for our Samoan PI youth.
That's it, Commissioner.
I think you got one more hand up. You got
Oh,
Lynn.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Lynn? Lynn?
Telephone, my name is Lynn. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. My name is Lynn Pelasuma, and I'm a program manager here at SCDC. I've been here for 12 years. SCDC and SFUSD has always worked together to ensure the kids are always supported academically. We do have an array of youth services that include summer program, after school program, academic support, cultural learning, case management, and many more. When the schools closed down due to the pandemic, the classes transitioned to online learning, and our kids were having trouble accessing Zoom due to inadequate Wi-Fi and not having a quiet space to learn. Some of our kids had no support in the home because the families had no tech experience. SCDC then transitioned into a learning hub. We've had over 80 plus elementary, middle, and high school students during that time. This past summer, we hosted our in-person summer program, which commemorated 25 years of one of our biggest youth programs, which is PIYA. And we had over 157 plus participants. All this continued during the pandemic. We just ask that you take into consideration the importance of our culture, the future of our kids and community, and support SCDC and continue to build by providing a space and safe haven for our Samoan and PI youth in SFUSD. Thank you very much.
I have Adele?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Talofo'a, my name is Edelweisswalbasa. I am the program coordinator for Tupulanga Talavo Tula'i, a program at the Saman Community Development Center. Before working at SCDC for the past 5 years, I am also an alumni of the Pacific Islander Youth Alliance program, where I learned more about my roots, my culture, and the resiliency and strength that thrives in our Samoan heritage. As a Samoan person raised in the Bay Area, there are rarely, if any, programs made for and by Pacific Islanders other than SCDC and the programs we built to serve the needs of our people. Learning about my culture outside of the home has connected me to the intersectionalities of who I am and has been translated throughout my life to be a community leader, advocate, mentor, Masters of Public Health student, and a social justice warrior for my community and the youth that I serve. Learning our language, values, and Indigenous ways of knowledge, health, and ways of life, which is never taught in our schools district, has continued to encourage me and the work that I do to share this gift of who we are as people with others. These spaces and conversations are crucial and fundamental for our youth to learn and talk about. We hope you support this resolution and work towards continuing to bring spaces like this to our community that are sometimes lost in the shuffle. Thank you.
No, maybe they'll just call them again.
Okay, now I think that's it, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you to the community for coming out tonight and showing support for the resolution. You know, it's really good to hear the history and all the programs and all the work that's being done with the Samoan Community Development Center. And, you know, I've witnessed firsthand, you know, all the work that they've been doing, you know, for the years and years and years here in the city. And so this partnership, you know, is very, like folks mentioned earlier, it's very pivotal and key, you know, to be able to, you know, build on what we've already got in front of us. And I think it's going to really, you know, help us in terms of like continuing engaging with our PI families and also families in the Viz Valley, right? Samoan Community Development Center does a lot of work in Visitation Valley, and this is only going to be a win for the community. And so I appreciate the community for showing up tonight and showing support for the resolution. I'm going to go ahead and see if I think it's me and Commissioner Sanchez. Commissioner Sanchez, do you have any questions or
Yes.
you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, thank you, Fauga, for the resolution and your continued work in this area, and also SCDC. the wonderful work that they've been engaged in for years with our district and the community at large. So my question really is, it sounds like the resolve of the resolution is about finding space in the southeast area of San Francisco. Can we elaborate on what that space might be, or do we have any ideas?
Commissioner, if I could respond to that, there is at this time no intention to relocate SCDC from their existing location at the John McLaren campus. I think they occupy a number of classrooms and also have shared access to a number of other spaces. I think the focus of the resolution is that we really enter into a joint use agreement, which is a mechanism that allows us to establish a real estate relationship with another entity based on other criteria than rent, right? But to really say, we have a mission, you have a mission, our missions complement each other, and the work that you're doing helps us accomplish our mission. And so we will be reaching out to SCDC to begin the development of that kind of framework. It's similar, a joint use agreement is also the mechanism we use for the BVHM overnight program at Buena Vista Horace Mann, just to provide a point of reference.
Okay. All right. Okay, the way it's worded, it just made it sound like a different site was going to be located in for the community.
I think there's differences potentially between the idea of I guess tonight we're switching the language to Samoan Education Center, that it has not been determined that those are the same. There's Samoan Community Development Center, and then there's the idea of a Samoan Education Center, and the extent to which and how that education center connects with existing SFUSD instructional resources or otherwise is still TBD. And so I think that is partially what is behind the language that refers to a site, because the idea of a program called Samoan Education Center that SFUSD runs does not exist in the district right now.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just on the logistical stuff around the resolution. So the amendment that I presented forward tonight is there a second and a motion, or motion and a second that needs to be done for that to occur?
For the resolution to be moved forward to the full board?
For the amendment.
I can basically recommend that we forward the resolution to the full board as amended with a positive recommendation.
With positive recommendation. Okay, cool.
And you both agree?
I hope it agrees. I agree. Yeah, we both got our hands up. So thank you, Commissioner Sanchez, for the support. Again, thank you to the community, SCDC, with Patsy Tito, John, Lynn, and Adele, and everyone out there. We appreciate you all. And so we'll go ahead and move on to the next item.
Great, commissioners. Thank you very much. Just by way of introduction, it's new team member night here at Buildings and Grounds Committee. We both have our new general counsel, Suzanne Kim. I want to introduce to you at long last, you've heard me talk about this position forever, but we now have a bond program manager, Visinia Aberri. She will provide the next presentation. And then also Karen Sullivan has actually been with the district for a year and helped us reopen schools for in-person learning, and is now finally to do her job, which is around capital planning and real estate portfolio management, and just started being able to go to her own office for the first time in the past month. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Visinia.
Thanks, Dawn. Good evening, commissioners. I'm Visinia Aberri, as Dawn said, in my 4th week here as the bond program manager. So, fourth week. I come to SFUSD after about a decade of work at the SFMTA in capital facilities project delivery. And I have a kindergarten student at SFUSD myself. So I'm excited to be here and get working on these important projects. I'm going to provide an overview for you this evening of the 2016 bond program to date. Since I'm so new in this role, I ask for your good grace. And when we get to questions, I'll also likely invite Dawn to assist, as of course, she has a lot more history on these projects than I do. So thank you in advance for your patience. I'm glad to meet you both, and let's get started. Go ahead, next slide. Okay, so this is the budget allocation of the $744 million bond that was approved by the voters in 2016. The bond team, prior to my arrival, of course, has worked diligently to deliver the capital projects to many of our schools. This breakdown shows the distribution of the original funding plan for the bond. And you can see that modernization projects top out the list at more than half of the total allocation. The district also made a commitment in this bond to technology upgrades, to new school construction, which of course we now know is mission-based school, to a vision for a new art center at 135 Van Ness, and then to upgrades to student nutrition services, green schoolyards, sustainability projects, and seed funds for teacher housing. Go ahead to the next slide. With the board's reallocation of the 135 Arts Center's $100 million last October, the items in green on this slide now represent the approved breakdown. And these funds are able to round out the budget for Mission Bay, to add Buena Vista Horace Mann as a modernization project, and to invest in comprehensive planning for school improvements in the Southeast, and to pursue schoolyard and site security improvements. You'll see also $1 million there for more air filtration for COVID, post-COVID or during COVID in-person learning. Go ahead to the next slide. So as of today, you can see the ticker mark for today's approximate date there towards the right of the slide. We have completed 6 major modernization projects. We have an additional 3 in the closeout phase. 2 more, George Washington High School and AP Giannini, construction ongoing to wrap later this year. And then Hillcrest Elementary and Thurgood Marshall are in active and ongoing construction through the end of the year. Can we go to the next? Here's a focus on just the active projects, including those in closeout. The ticker line here indicates the upcoming bond sale, where we will seek new bond proceeds to fund the remaining construction costs of these and other projects, as well as a portion of the Mission Bay School budget and the design costs for Buena Vista Horace Mann. The bond sale is expected to occur in early March, and I will say a bit more of that on a later slide. Thank you. The prior slide was scheduled, and this is just another way to look at active projects by budget breakdown. You might note that aside from mission-based school, which of course is new school construction, the projects with the largest budgets here are also the ones with construction ongoing. This really reflects both the complexity of the projects and the increases in construction over time, including pretty significant bumps in construction costs during COVID. And one more. And so I just mentioned before that the bond sale was going to be March. It says February here. So as we have sort of worked together with our internal finance office and our bond counsel, it's clear that we need a bit more time. So this is now updated to March. Some other highlights for you this evening. So following board approval of the reallocation of funds and newly allocated funds to Buena Vista Horace Mann, and in anticipation of the March bond sale, we have assigned a project manager to Buena Vista Horace Mann to lead the project, and we have initiated weekly meetings with the school administrators on site. We also had a stakeholder meeting last week in the evening to initiate the project formally with the community. We have also been briefing commissioners on the Mission Bay EIR in anticipation of the Mission Bay project approvals, which are upcoming in the next few months. That is a super high level update that I have for you tonight. I'm happy to elaborate on anything or answer questions. Thanks.
Commissioners, I would just also add that now that we have a bond program manager, I also would like to agendize on a monthly basis, just again, a brief update around the bond program and invite your feedback on both the format and content of that status update. But I think it's a healthy practice for a bond program, and particularly as we begin the projects that have been identified for this next $100 million of expenditure. It's a good way to keep everyone in the loop.
Deborah, could you see if we have any public comment on this item?
Yes. If you'd like to speak to this item, can you please raise your hand? Seeing none, Commissioner.
Okay. We'll open it up for discussion. Commissioner Sanchez, do you have any questions?
Yes, thanks. Can you characterize how the BVHM community meeting went and how many folks attended, et cetera?
Certainly, Commissioner. There were over 50 participants, I think somewhere in the 50 to 60 range. A wide representation of, I think, the school community, from including staff and families. The tenor was impatient, but I think that is consistent and understandable, given the long arc of advocacy that was required to get us here. We introduced both our bond program manager, Licenia Iberri, and also Roxana Vargas Greenan, who was the actual project manager, will be the project manager for this project. And they were treated with friendly optimism. I think they were greeted with friendly optimism. And also a strong, again, sense of urgency and advocacy to begin moving as soon as possible on the project and to provide more frequent interaction with the community to ensure that we will be as inclusive, urge us to be as inclusive as possible in our outreach, and also to provide, I think, a more concrete set of next steps for the project.
Do you have a scheduled next meeting?
We do not have a scheduled next meeting because we are working with site leadership to develop a steering committee. And also it's our hope that we will, and this was the senior's suggestion, recommendation, given the breadth and interest on the part of the community to participate in the modernization scoping, that we also pursue hiring an outreach consultant to help us reach our goals of 100% participation. And I don't know if maybe the bond, Licenia, if you have anything more recent, you've been talking to Roxana over the past week and might have a more recent update.
Yeah, just to note that in last week's on-site meetings with school administrators, they did request that we come back and have another similar forum with the community end of February. So we will be putting that together.
Okay, cool, thank you. And in regards to the list of schools that are still undergoing bond work, capital work, can you give some highlights for some of the work? For example, Thurgood, that's a really large project, and I think Hillcrest is also a large project. Can you just talk about some of that?
I can start, and then I might need John to jump in because I don't know the details of all the projects quite yet. But I can tell you on the Hillcrest site, the crews out there are wrapping up the modernization work on the existing building, but commencing construction on the new building there. We just had a kickoff meeting for the new building just last week. So that is underway. Thurgood Marshall, I know that has a substantial scope on the whole educational wing of that building. They're replacing the entire, everything on all the curtain wall, the big glass wall that you see like from everywhere in the city. And so it's a substantial modernization project that will go through that entire building and also do a lot of accessibility improvements on the front side, many of which I think are actually already in. But yeah, the construction there is it's an older building, and we do, as we have been working through the building, that we have sort of uncovered some unknown things. So I know that our project manager is working to address those during the construction. I don't know if Dawn, if you have anything else you want to add on Thurgood Marshall. I know it's a big undertaking for sure.
Yeah, I think again that is also a large campus, and so I think also seismic scope for Thurgood Marshall. I would have to go back and confirm that myself because I often get Thurgood Marshall's scope of work confused with the George Washington High School scope of work, where George Washington High School as well as undergoing a massive seismic structuring project as well. That is a big driver of the cost there. Commissioner, if you give me a minute, I can also look up more notes if you want more detail.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And then my last question is around West Portal and Denman.
Yeah.
That work is, the design phase is done, right? But the construction won't be covered during this or with this current bond. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct with this current bond. There are funding sources. As you're probably aware, we do. It is very common practice, not just for our GEO bond program, but all school bond programs, and the state requires this, that in order to get state grant funds, you often have to spend your own money first. So we have put together and now expended all of our modernization program, or have plans to with the board's reauthorization. We are expecting bond, or I should say state grant funds, to come in slowly over time to reimburse us for some of those early expenditures, but the schedule is unclear to myself. And so as those funds come in, there may be opportunities to launch additional projects through construction, but the price tags on, I believe it's Denman, is pretty substantive. One of them is close to $50 million. So I think, but if those funds become available to us, we will be, returning to the board to ask for feedback on the prioritization.
But it's likely that a forthcoming bond will have to be passed.
I think to get both of them, very likely.
And
to get both of them, yes.
I know this isn't part of the agenda, but maybe we can have it as a future standing item about the future bond.
Mm-hmm.
So we can keep that discussion alive. But thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've talked quite a bit about the next bond, and how do we set ourselves up as a school district to be successful? With I would like to see a poll done by the school district on what the voter engagement would look like in terms of putting out another bond. But I do believe that we have to do right by the funds that we were given, in 2016, to be able to show the voters that we can execute. Is it Licinia?
Licinia, yes.
Licinia. Yeah. Welcome to the school district.
Thank you.
Yep. Can you talk a little bit about the next steps for the outdoor learning in the Southeast planning in terms of the repurposing, the $100 million repurposing? I know that we've been having conversations around it, and I think you're like 4 weeks in, so you're probably, you're probably already dialed in. But
yeah, totally, I know everything. I think I need to punt to Dawn on that. For the answer that.
So, Commissioner, I have really focused the bond team, both the Senior and Roxana's attention on getting up to speed on BVHM and Mission Bay. So I'm happy to just kind of give an update on outdoor learning and Southeast facility planning for tonight. And by the time we get to our next month's meeting, I intend to be able to turn over the presentation entirely. So for Southeast facility planning, we're making some good progress. There is a small group that includes myself, our Southeast instructional leadership, Demetris Rice-Mitchell, Stacy Affleck, Myung Lee, Minu Yashar, and a few others who have been meeting to kind of work on the plan, and in particular how we will eventually engage site leaders and the public more deeply. But what we have engaged so far is to really work together to think about priorities for the Southeast. And I think one thing that has come through loud and clear is the hope and commitment that as we make renovations, we are creating a comparable student experience from a facilities perspective for all students in the Southeast, regardless of which school they attend. So that's something that has emerged as a core principle for us. Our next item is actually on our capital condition assessment, which is an important precursor for not only future bond planning, but also setting up future priorities for additional capital projects. So we are getting some preliminary data back in the next 2 weeks of our first few sites, all focused in the Southeast, that we asked our capital condition assessment to evaluate. We will be getting first data back from that, and we will begin to synthesize what that data means in terms of, again, overall costs that are needed to renovate and repair facilities such as Carver, Malcolm X, Bret Hart, and other schools in the Southeast. We hope then, like spring, to be able to come forward to the board with a more fleshed out plan that includes potential projects as well as budgets and schedules. For outdoor learning, we have begun the conversation again without cash in hand. We cannot launch the projects fully, but we have started the planning process for outdoor learning to begin to define more specifically the policy criteria that we will use to evaluate projects, and also to look at the pipeline of projects that are available right now in terms of projects that have strong leadership, site leadership and sponsorship, and have done already some pre-work to think through what their vision is of their sites. Our goal is that next month we'll be able to come back to you and share with you what we think the stakeholder process can look like to engage feedback from stakeholders, and again, get feedback on potential priorities for the funding.
All right, that sounds good. A follow-up in terms of stakeholder engagement, if I could remember, there was a conversation that we had that said we would be engaging with partners, around March, and I say that, intentionally around, this new relationship we're building with SCDC, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, is that still a realistic timeline for partner engagement or stakeholder engagement? I know there was a process right now with our internal district and making sure that, but.
I believe so, Commissioner. Right now we're on track to meet that timeline.
Sounds good. Okay. All right. I don't have any more questions. Commissioner Sanchez seems to be nodding his head sideways. Okay. So we can go ahead and move on to the final item of the night. What is that? Status update on the Facilities Division Capital Condition Assessment Project. Chief Kamala Nathan, do you have a presenter on this?
Yes, we do. I'm joined tonight by our Executive Director of Facility and Capital Planning, Karen Sullivan. We have also, this is another project we've talked about for a while, that in order to bring more clarity and transparency to our capital planning and determining which sites should receive investment, it's important that in addition to the qualitative data we receive from sites about their experience, that we also include objective quantitative data that is collected from the sites on their condition. To that end, we contracted with a firm called BFA, who has since been acquired by Gordian Group, which is a well-established construction services firm, to begin a capital condition assessment of all of our properties. Very excited about this project, very excited to get the data back from it and share it with the broader SFUSD community. And so tonight I would just introduce Karen Sullivan and ask her to go through this presentation for you.
Don. Okay. So let's see. Oh, so we can go to the next slide. Thanks. Okay, so here we have an overview of the scope of the condition assessment process. So from a building perspective, we're looking at 153 total sites, and that includes school sites, administrative buildings, and then buildings that are leased out to other entities. Those buildings translate to about 10.4 million square feet. In terms of contract scope, we're looking at this phase of the engagement for two different types of services. One is on-site assessments, where a team of 2 assessors, generally it's an architect with an engineer with a mechanical background, The assessors go on site to each building and evaluate the condition of all systems within the building. In addition to these on-site assessments, we're also getting a barcoding of the major systems within the buildings. So that includes things like a boiler, HVAC, elevators, things like that. Not every system in the building, but major equipment and components. Once the assessors go on site and collect the data, that data is compiled and then entered into a cloud-based database system. When all of that information is finalized, we then have the opportunity to generate different dashboards, customized reports. There's some mapping features that we can use to display the data that's been collected and analyze it in a variety of different ways. Next slide, please. So the main metric that's going to be used throughout the condition assessment is what's called the Facility Condition Index, or FCI. And on this slide, we have a summary of the FCI equation, but conceptually what it looks at is the ratio of the cost to replace a system within a building, or the cost to repair a system within a building to the cost to replace that system. So for instance, if you're looking at a heating system, the cost to replace that system could be $300,000. If the cost to repair the system could be $300,000. If the cost to replace the system is $305,000, that is an indicator that that system is deficient and is in need of replacement. And so when you're looking at FCI, the metric that you're looking at is the closer you get to 1, the worse condition a component within the building may be. And then we have some benchmarks here of conditions. So pretty much when you're looking at FCI, a rule of thumb potentially could be that anything over 30% would be considered in fair to excellent condition. But again, this is all subjective to what the role that system plays within the building and how important it is, how high of a priority it is to replace. Next slide, please. And so once you have the FCI data, there's a lot of ways that it can be used to identify which buildings you want to target your investments to. And so this slide is an example from the Detroit Public Schools. They had a graph in their condition assessment showing the FCI for the entire for an entire building across their portfolio of schools. So you could see which schools are in need of targeted investments. Next slide, please. And then this is an example from Atlanta Public Schools. They looked at school sites by category. So I think the interesting thing here is if you were looking at this report, the FCI for elementary, middle, and high schools are all in good condition, less than 15%, whereas the FCIs for other buildings that are used for other purposes are indicating that there's more need for investment. And those FCIs are, exceeding 25%. Next slide. So where we are in the process, I think Dawn mentioned we started with a pilot at the beginning of January of 5 sites in the Southeast. The consultant BFA is in the process of analyzing that data and is hoping to get us a draft report by the end of this week. The week of February 14th, we're going to kick off the facility condition assessments. So in general, there'll be a team of assessors for 2 weeks going to about 2 sites a day, or the equivalent of 60,000 square feet. So for like a middle school or high school, sometimes like BVHM, for example, that was a full day assessment when they were on site there. So this is an overview of the order in which sites will be assessed. So there's no priority here. It's just the order in which the condition assessments are happening. So we're starting with the Southeast. The next group will be school sites that have not had major work completed since 2006. And then we just move forward from there. So group 3 is school sites that had investments in the 2006 bond. Group 4 had investment in 2011. Group 5 includes school sites that had investments from the 2016 bond and charter school sites. And then group 6 is administrative buildings and other sites. Next slide, please. This is an overview of our schedule. Our hope is that all school sites, so groups 1 through 5, we will have completed assessments and finalize the data by end of June, early July. Next slide. And then this is just a little more detail on the process, the assessment process and where we're at. So far, we've completed the pre-assessment data gathering. So we provided the consultant with a lot of information on the buildings, including floor plans, information from the work order system, other information we had on investments that had been done in the building, so that when they went to a building, they could go in with an understanding of the space, but also questions about different systems that may be in need of investment. And so right now we're kicking off the site assessments and barcoding. Then we'll move on from there on a rolling basis. As assessments are completed, we'll get reports. That information will be analyzed, finalized. And then a thing that we're keeping in mind as we go through this process is what are the systems that we need to implement on our end so that this data can be maintained after the condition assessments are complete. And then ultimately, once all that information has been collected, as Dawn mentioned, the data will be used to inform some of the choices and strategies that inform the capital plan. Okay, and that's it for me. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Karen. Deborah, can you see if we have any public comments on this item?
If you'd like to speak to this item, can you please raise your hand? Seeing none, Commissioner.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Sanchez, do you have any questions, comments?
Yes, thanks. So this would be used, I think your last comments on the last slide are partially to inform a future bond or future bonds.
Yes, and also all of our capital investment dollars. I think that we are, as a district, supposed to have a 10-year capital plan. Ours has expired. We intend to use this data to help write a capital plan for the district that would inform not only future bond investment, but also the use of our developer impact fees and our 3% deferred maintenance funds, and help respond to the board's questions about long-term strategy for improving ventilation at school sites. So it serves many, many purposes, but it should be considered a core, an important strategic data set for all of the facilities division's work.
Okay, great. And then I think it was 150 some odd sites that we have. Does that include, for example, a site that has that's co-located? For example, Moscone Elementary also has an early ed, Las Americas. Is that counted as 2 or 1 site?
Oh, question. We just talked about that today. So like a good example is Leola Havard. So Leola Havard would be 1 site with a category for admin, and we'll have a breakdown of admin versus early ed there. So at Moscone, I can't remember the layout there, but if the early ed is within that building, we would categorize that space as its own asset. But if it's in a different standalone structure, it would get its own, it would then have its own entry for that building.
It has its own entry, but it's the same complex.
Right. So that would be another case where we would differentiate early ed space from K through 5.
Okay. So that in essence would be 2 sites.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, in our list, it would count as 1 because it's 1 site that they're assessing, but in the database, we're going to differentiate.
Okay. And then on slide 6, under group 6, admin and other sites, some of these, like for example, the 106 Bartlett, I think 106 Bartlett and 110 Bartlett is the City College site in the Mission, that they're in the middle of like a 70-year lease with the district. Would be doing an FCA on them, like that kind of building?
Our intention right now is to make sure that all properties owned by SFUSD get an assessment and an FCI score. Even for buildings that have tenants, I think the one notable exception is probably the Westfield Mall. Because we are partial, we are an owner, but we are a small, relatively small part of the footprint. That it's useful information for us as we also think about, again, our overall portfolio and the structure of our lease agreements as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you, Karen, for the presentation. I'm excited. You know, I know we've been talking about this for a while now, you know, and so just to kind of see it up and running, I would love to see the data and the results on this um, as you guys produce it, right? So I'm excited and really excited to see what this capital plan actually looks like. My question is, in terms of building out the capital plan, is there going to be an opportunity for stakeholder engagement to participate in that? Or how does that work out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my hope is that as the data, I don't think there's much in the way of stakeholder engagement about the data methodology, right? It is what it is to ensure that it's objective and consistent and we can do apples to apples comparisons. It's important that that stay the same as it's applied. But I think that there are two pieces of feedback that we hope to get from the overall community. Once we get this information back, I'm really looking forward to workshopping it with different constituencies to say, how does this land on you? Because again, it is totally possible to have a building that is structurally in great condition, but is functionally failing to meet your needs, right? Where the roof is perfect, it's brand new, the foundation is great, the walls are okay, the lighting is okay, but to just say, I don't know, this isn't working for us, right? And so it's really important that as we think about our capital planning and prioritizing facilities, that we're including moments for people to reflect on their user experience as an important piece of feedback in addition to the objective quantitative feedback we get from the consultant. So that's one thing, is that as we get these results and you see all the schools stack up on their FCI scores, a few of them, I expect people are going to be like, oh yeah, of course, right? And then there's going to be an interesting middle section that I think it's going to be really important to get feedback from folks to help us distinguish how to prioritize for those like middle grade facilities. The second piece of feedback that I think is needed, not just from stakeholders, but from the board is what kinds of topics, I've got a rough idea of an outline of the capital plan, but I want to share that with the board and get your feedback to see if there are particular chapters you'd like to request, essentially, or places where we want to go deeper on our discussion. The last capital plan had a pretty lengthy discussion about demographic trends for the district. And this version, we might want to comment on student assignment policy and the potential changes to our capital planning as a result of that. I want to talk about ventilation is going to need a chapter of its own. We're going to want to talk about outdoor learning potentially. So I look forward to getting feedback from the board as well, as we can share our proposed outline for the plan and to see if there are additional topics that you'd like to make sure are really thoroughly addressed.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I would love to see a chapter later on when the discussion happens around how do we build schools so that they are community schools, right? So now they're academic schools. And what would it look like for us to actually build community schools with like full out kitchens with like, it sounds like something that's getting ready to happen at BVHM. BVHM has like this community school makeup to it, but I'm curious to see what the design looks like, after you guys finish it, because what they have at that place is, they have organizations operating, but long story short, right? Like, what does a community school actually look like, right? And does the current school setups provide us with that opportunity for flexibility?
Thank you.
Yeah. My last comments were, I am happy you guys are doing a focus out there in the Southeast. And I don't know where this lands, but, I was at Visitation Valley Elementary School the other day, and the courtyard was like a wave. Like it was, it did this thing where like if you roll the ball, it'll literally roll like this, right? And so, does that fall into the assessment conditioning plan that we're doing right now? And is there opportunity? Is that a chapter? Like, what is
I think I'll let Karen talk through the methodology, but it's definitely one of the nice things about this kind of assessment is you can actually look at asset classes across the district, meaning you could do a report that just said, let's just talk about roofs across the district and see how they're doing. Same thing for condition of asphalt or parking lots. And what I expect to see are quite a number of both schoolyards or sites where the building is actually in okay shape, but the schoolyard might need a lot of work. And the asphalt has aged faster than everything else. So I'm super curious to see that data myself. And it's another important place to get community feedback, where sometimes, again, things can be, all things considered, structurally okay, but not working anymore. So I don't know, Karen, you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, not particularly, but just to reinforce what Dawn said, there will be like an FCI associated to pavement, and pavement will be broken down from between play yard pavement on like a court, like a basketball court or tennis court, and then pavement in a parking lot. And so you would be able to differentiate pavement in those areas. The quality of the pavement would be assessed. And also the striping is another component of yards that will be assessed, and the condition and need for different types of, if that needs to be upgraded or redone.
I got one more for you guys, and it just came to me. And I actually mentioned this to the chief before. The assessment of windows, we're doing window assessment. I think it'd be great, realistically, if we were to, when you're assessing out there in the Southeast in schools, like, let me just be direct and open. When there's windows, where there's bullets going through the windows, right? Like, what is our response to that, right? Like, what can we do in terms of like moving forward? Like, what does that look like with the capital condition assessment, right? Like, what is the feedback when you go out there and you see that there are holes in windows, right? Like, what does that look like materially coming out of that, and what do we do, right? And so, so I'll just leave that with you all, but would love to see, something that protects the kids, keeps kids safe, from that lens, so.
Mhm.
Okay.
Can I add a couple?
Yeah, sure.
So one, I'm hoping this is part of it already, is portables. They just have to go. I mean, we can't have schools with portables in the playgrounds taking up space, playing space, and just not just an eyesore, but not up to par as a regular classroom. I just think it's embarrassing and sends the wrong message to our communities. So Cesar Chavez is like the poster child for that. There's a number of schools that we just have to assess that and deal with it. And then chain link fences that look like prison fences.
Yeah.
Can't have that.
Yeah.
We just can't.
We share that pet peeve.
Yeah. And then playgrounds ought to be equitable across the district. So we can't have a high-end play structure at one school on the west side, for example, and have a crappy one or none at a school in the southeast section. I mean, it's just not acceptable. And that goes for playing fields as well. So we have to have equitable structures, playground in general, and playing fields. We need playing fields for schools that want them. And so those are, I hope, all part of the assessment plan that we're moving forward with.
Yeah, collecting data on all those different components.
I promise I'm going to get us out of here by 6 o'clock. We got 3 minutes. And so I think that's it. Chief did mention one thing around the zoning. We're getting ready to go in the school assignment. And it's getting ready to change enrollment. So that'll be interesting in terms of what comes out of this, assessment in terms of being able to structure that. But okay. Commissioner Sanchez, if you don't have any more questions, Chief, do you have any more comments or feedback?
Commissioner, thank you very much. Again, looking forward to providing routine updates on these items and the progress. Really appreciate your feedback tonight.
All right. Well, everyone knows the Niners lost yesterday, so Warriors are still playing. The Giants are coming up. We have a whole lot of San Francisco teams that are willing to entertain us. So, thank you all again. Thank you to the staff and public for showing up tonight. You guys all have a great evening.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.